Good morning, students. Children, in our previous video, we have brief introduction about excretion. Excretion in different animals. Today we are going to talk about human excretory system. Children, human excretory system consists of 4 important organs like a pair of kidneys, a pair of ureter, urinary bladder and urethra. Talking about kidney are reddish brown bean-shaped structure situated between the level of last thoracic and third lumbar vertebra, that is close to the dorsal inner wall of abdominal cavity. Each kidney of an adult human measures 10 to 12 cm in length, 5 to 7 cm in width, 2 to 3 cm in thickness with an average weight of 120 to 170 grams. Children, towards the center of inner concave surface of the kidney is a notch, and that notch is termed as hilum. Then we have a pair of ureters, which are cylinder tubes arising from hilum of the kidney, and it opens into urinary bladder as just shown in the picture. Then we have a urinary bladder, which is pear-shaped muscular reservoir of urine. It opens into urethra. Talking about urethra opens to outside through the urethral aperture. The one important difference between male and female excretory system, that urethra is longer in male than in females. Now let us talk about the structure of kidney in little more detail. Children, as I mentioned just now, that the average weight of kidney is approx 120 to 170 grams. The very first important structure of the kidney is hilum. Children, talking about the hilum, so the center of inner concave surface of kidney is known as hilum, and ureters, blood vessels and nerves enter the kidney from here, right? So all these things enter to the kidney from the hilum. Talking about renal pelvis, so renal pelvis is a funnel-shaped space inside the hilum. It receives urine from the kidney nephrons. The another important part is calyx. Calyx are the projections of renal pelvis. So the projections you see in this picture are known as calyx. Small hollow tubes to collect urine, and minor calyces merge to form the major calyces, which in turn from the hollow renal pelvis. So these structure which you have seen here are known as calyx. Now talking about the another important structures is the renal capsule. Now children, when we talk about the renal capsule, so the thin layer of connective tissue which surrounds the kidney is known as renal capsule, right? It is fibrous and transparent. It is a tough layer which ensures protection of the inner soft tissues. It also provides the shape to the kidney. The another important thing which I want to discuss with you are the zones of kidney. Inside the kidney there are 2 zones, an outer cortex and an inner medulla. Cortex is the smooth outer zone which is reddish in color, and medulla is a striated inner zone which is reddish brown in color. The medulla is divided into a few conical masses which is known as medullary pyramids, which projecting into the calyces. The cortex extends in between the medullary pyramids as the renal columns, which is known as columns of Bertini. Now children, let us talk about nephrons. Children, each kidney has nearly 1 million complex tubular structures which is known as nephron. So nephron are the functional unit of kidney, and each nephron act as microfilter. So the functional unit of kidney is nephron. Now talking about the nephron are tubular structure, and children, each nephron consists of two important parts. What are those 2 important parts? Glomerulus and renal tubules. Talking about glomerulus, so glomerulus is a tuft of capillaries formed by the afferent arterioles, which is a fine branch of renal artery, and blood from the glomerulus is carried away by the efferent arterioles. So the network of very thin walled blood capillaries which involve efferent arterioles and efferent arterioles together from the glomerulus. Efferent arterioles bring blood into glomerulus and efferent arterioles drain blood out of glomerulus. Got it? Now the next important part is renal tubule. Now children, talking about the renal tubule begins with a double-walled cup-like structure which is known as Bowman's capsule. So in this picture, the cup-like structure which encloses the glomerulus. Children, glomerulus along with the Bowman capsule is termed as Malpighian body, that is renal corpuscles. The tubule continue further to form a highly coiled network, that is proximal convoluted tubule. So this is proximal convoluted tubule. A hairpin shaped loop of Henle is the next part of the tubule which has descending and ascending limb. The ascending limb continues another highly coiled tubule that is known as distal convoluted tubule. And the distal convoluted tubule of many nephron opens into a straight tube which is known as collecting duct, and many of which coverage and open into the renal pelvis through medullary pyramids in the calyces. So the Malpighian corpuscles, proximal convoluted tubule and distal convoluted tubule of nephron are situated in the cortical region of the kidney, whereas loop of Henle dips into the medulla. Children, in majority of nephrons, the loop of Henle is too short and extend only a very little into the medulla. Such nephron are called cortical nephrons. In some of the nephron, the loop of Henle is very long and runs deep into the medulla. This kind of nephron are called as juxtamedullary nephron. I hope you got my points. So let us take a recap of the structure of renal tubule. So renal tubule has the different part like the Bowman capsule we have discussed. It continues with proximal convoluted tubule, then have the hairpin like structure which have ascending and descending limb, that is known as loop of Henle. It is continue with the distal convoluted tubule, and all the tubules are collected into the collecting duct. It is a straight tubular structure in which multiple distal convoluted tubules open, and it extends from cortex to inner part of medulla, right? So this is about the structure of nephron. Now let us talk about the process of urine formation. So children, urine formation involves three main processes. What are the name of these three steps? That is filtration, reabsorption and secretion. That takes place in different part of the nephron. Children, the very first step in urine formation is the filtration of blood, which is carried out by the glomerulus and is called glomerular filtration. On an average, 1100 to 1200 ml of blood is filtered by the kidney per minute, which constitute roughly 1/5 of the blood pumped out by each ventricle of the heart in a minute. The glomerular capillary blood pressures causes filtration of blood through three layers. The first one is endothelium of glomerular blood vessel, the epithelium of Bowman capsule, and a basement membrane between these two layers. I repeat my words. The glomerular capillary blood pressure causes filtration of blood through three layers. What are those three layers? The first layer is endothelium of glomerular blood vessel. Glomerular blood vessels की endothelium, epithelium of Bowman capsule and basement membrane. Basement membrane between the two layers, right? So the epithelial cell of Bowman capsules called podocyte are arranged in an intricate manner so as to leave some minute space called filtration slits or slit pore. Blood is filtered so finely through these membranes that almost all the constituent of the plasma except protein pass on to the lumen of Bowman capsule. Therefore, it is considered as the process of ultrafiltration. Right? Children, the amount of filtrate formed by kidney per minute is called glomerular filtration rate. It is abbreviated as GFR. And GFR in a healthy individual is approximately 125 ml per minute. That is 180 liters per day. The next important step is reabsorption. Almost 99% of filtrate is reabsorbed by renal tubule. Useful substances are reabsorbed by epithelial cell of tubule and sent back to the blood. Waste are absorbed from blood and sent to the filtrate. Water moves under osmotic pressure. Now let us see the role of different tubules. First, let us talk about proximal convoluted tubule. Large amount of reabsorption of nutrients, waters and electrolyte occur here. Presence of brush border epithelium increases the surface area for absorption. Now Henle's loop. Minimum reabsorption occur here. Important role of loop of Henle is osmoregulation. Distal convoluted tubule. Conditioned reabsorption occurs here. In collecting duct, large amount of reabsorption of water occurs here. So these are the function of these tubular structure. So you have to learn the function of these different tubules. Now let us talk about the third step, that is known as secretion. Children, the cells of tubules secrete substances into the filtrate. It also maintains ionic and acid-base balance of body fluid. Let us see the role of different tubules in secretions. Just now we have seen the role of tubules in absorption. Now we will see the role of tubule in secretion. Talking about proximal convoluted tubule, so selective secretion of hydrogen, ammonia and potassium is occur in proximal convoluted tubule. Henle's loop, descending limb, transport of water. Ascending limb, active passive transport of electrolyte. Distal convoluted tubule, selective selection of hydrogen, ammonium, potassium. Collecting duct, selective secretion of hydrogen and potassium ion. So these electrolytes are basically secreted by these tubular structures. So finally the concentrated urine is being formed. Let us talk about the concentration of urine. Children, the removal of water makes the urine more concentrated, and countercurrent mechanism plays the very important role here. So let us see what is countercurrent mechanism. Children, filtrate flows in opposite direction through the Henle's loop. We know that it is a U-shaped structure, so it has one ascending and one descending limb. So filtrate flows in the opposite direction through the Henle's loop and therefore forms a countercurrent, opposite direction. That is, descending limb is permeable to water and ascending limb is impermeable to water, but permeable to electrolyte. The proximity between Henle's loop and vasa recta as well as the countercurrent in them help in maintaining and increasing osmolarity towards the inner medullary interstitium. If you refer the figure of your NCERT book on page number 296, it is clearly shown the countercurrent mechanism. Now what actually happens in countercurrent mechanism? Children, mammals have the ability to produce a concentrated urine, and the Henle's loop and vasa recta plays a very significant role in this. The flow of filtrate in two limbs of Henle's loop in the opposite direction that we know, and thus forms the counter current. And the flow of blood through the two limbs of vasa recta is also a counter current pattern. The filtrate flows in the Henle's loop and blood flows in the vasa recta. Right? It clearly described in the picture figure 19.6 of your NCERT on page number 296. Now the proximity between the Henle's and vasa recta as well as the counter current in them help in the maintaining and increase osmolarity towards the inner medullary interstitium. Right? Osmolarity means like from 300 milliosmol per liter in the cortex to about 1200 milliosmol per liter in the inner medulla. Now children, the gradient is mainly caused by the NaCl and urea. तो ये जो gradient develop होता है, it is mainly because of NaCl and urea. NaCl is transported by the ascending limb of Henle's loop, which is exchanged with the descending limb of vasa recta. NaCl is returned to the interstitium by the ascending portion of the vasa recta. Similarly, small amount of urea enters the thin segment of ascending limb of Henle's loop, which is transported back to interstitium by the collecting tubule. So, the NaCl moves from the osmolarity gradient, right? So, the NaCl is moved out from the ascending limb of vasa recta and the descending limb of nephron. It will move out. So NaCl is transported by ascending limb of Henle's loop, which is exchanged with the descending limb of vasa recta. Henle's loop का ascending limb और vasa recta का descending limb. There is the exchange of NaCl. Now NaCl is returned to the interstitium by the ascending portion of vasa recta. Finally, it will come back. Talking about urea, urea enters the ascending limb of Henle's loop, which is transported back to interstitium by the collecting tubule. So children, this transport of substances facilitated by the arrangement of Henle's loop and vasa recta, that is known as counter current mechanism. Because the flow of substances are in opposite direction, first it is secreted out and finally it is reabsorbed by the interstitium. So that is why it is termed as counter current mechanism. Talking about the overall process of urine formation, so substances like glucose, amino acid, salt and good amount of water are selectively reabsorbed as the urine flows along with the tubular part of nephron. The amount of water reabsorbed depending upon the amount of waste in the body, the amount of excessive water in the body. Urine passes through the ureter to the urinary bladder. Then it is get collected in the urinary bladder till the pressure increase, finally passed out through the urethra. Talking about the micturition. Children, micturition is the release of urine from urinary bladder to urethra. It is also termed as urination. This occurs involuntary in children up to 4 to 5 years. Thereafter regulated voluntary. Now let us see the regulation of micturition. Urinary bladder plays an important role in regulating micturition. It is a collapsible sac-like structure located in pelvis. Its walls are made of muscles called detrusor muscles, and the lower portion of bladder is bladder neck. Urinary bladder regulate micturition in the following ways. Like urinary bladder is full with urine, then stretch receptor sends signal to central nervous system. Central nervous system send motor signals to contact detrusor muscles and relax sphincter muscles. Then the urine is released. So these are the 4 different steps for micturition. Talking about the excretory disorders. So uremia, that is the accumulation of urea in blood. It causes urea and waste accumulation in the body. Symptoms are nausea, vomiting, weight loss, shortness of breath, irregular heartbeat. Second disorder is kidney failure. Causes are kidneys stop functioning, which result in waste accumulation. Symptoms are shortness of breath, chest pain, headache, etc. Acute kidney failure can be corrected by kidney transplant. Renal calculi. Causes are formation of a stone in kidney. Symptoms are vomiting, pain inside of abdomen, chills and fever. So these are some of the excretory disorders. So I hope whatever we have discussed today, that becomes clear to you. If you found any difficulty, any doubt, so just feel free to ask. Till then, have a nice day and thank you.